The Thought Lab. Right, Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Hans. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So, quickly, before we start, you're guest number one on the Thought Lab podcast.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor.
Either you're very kind or you're very brave. I'm not sure which.
I'm very stupid.
Or a little bit stupid. But it is really, really cool to have you on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I think you're very well situated in terms of your position, in terms of discussing some very awesome things, which I hope we'll go into today. But before we start, I want to do a little bit of a summary with you, if I may. Okay, so this is my summary of Danella Eliasov. First female fighter signed to EFC, right? Surgeon.
No, so I had to do a Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery, so I'm not a specialist surgeon.
You're not a specialist surgeon?
Yeah, no, I'm not a specialist surgeon. I did a Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery, but I'm a specialist psychiatrist.
Specialist psychiatrist?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I've got psychiatrist, BJJ South African champion?
Yes.
3 times?
Yes.
Yes, 3 times. Abu Dhabi finalist? Yes, in your weight category. And you came third that year in? Absolutes. That's right, I remember. So BJJ purple, psychiatrist, specialist, wife. Yes, how long have you been married now?
How long have I should know that? 2 and a bit years.
So on that note, Danella Eliasov.
Yes.
Is that never going to change?
No, because Dr. Eliasov's never going to change, and I can't be Mrs. Ben Nathan and Dr. Eliasov. To me, it's too much admin. And I'm not good with admin.
Okay.
So that's literally why I'm not changing it.
So that's it.
Yeah, that's literally. I'm not going to Home Affairs, so.
I wouldn't want to go to Home Affairs either.
Yeah.
I said to my fiance, you can keep it.
Yeah.
Her surname is far better known than mine. I'm Smith.
Oh, yeah.
Only cool thing is you've got Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
That is quite cool.
You
Okay,
see.
so my surname I could have upgraded because no one can pronounce or spell my surname.
True story.
So I could have done with an upgrade, but the thought of Home Affairs puts me off anything like that, so I will not be going to Home Affairs.
I've known you for 10 years and I still forget whether it's E at the end or no E at the end.
Exactly, but there we go.
So next up, cat lover.
Yeah.
Indeed. Bird lover.
Yes. Anything that's an animal.
Anything that's an animal. Is your bird still alive? And what is your bird's name?
Yes, thank God. My bird is very well, thank you. His name is Max.
So your bird is very well alive, and thank God he's alive. For you, not for any of your visitors.
No, I was going to say, I think I sensed you were hoping that I would actually say.
I wanted to come visit again. I'm too scared.
Yeah.
Traveler extraordinaire.
Trying. That's
Trying
kind
to
of,
be a
yeah,
traveller
getting there.
extraordinaire.
Lots of places still to go.
Talking about that, Iran.
Yes.
Why the hell would you go to Iran?
Well, it's Persia. So
It is Persia. I know it's Persia.
That's kind of
indeed.
an important place in terms of the history of humankind.
Absolutely.
And as a Jew, it's important in terms of our history. A lot of Jewish kind of history happened there. And in terms of just the place, I mean, it also appealed to me there's a lot of historical stuff. It's a beautiful place. And also in terms of, I suppose, in a community that I live, it's like, I don't know, demons and dragons live in Iran. You know, the West demonized them, Trump, they're just like this whole bunch of demons living in this demon land. And I thought I'll go and check it out and see. And no, there were no demons. They were very nice people. Yeah.
I read something on your Facebook with regards to being advised not to discuss your religion.
So I can say for sure that they are anti-Semitic. I can say that without a doubt. And the government, that they say that you're allowed to practice Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, but nothing else. So if you practice anything else...
So literally only the Abrahamic religions?
Yes, only the monotheistic religions. And so Zoroastrianism, you're allowed to in theory, but from what I gathered, being there, that they are quite persecuted.
Not so much.
The Jews, from what I gather, very isolated, very persecuted. Most of them have left. I was not sure if I can tell people I'm Jewish, but then I met one girl and I kind of got to know her. I thought, I'm just going to tell her and see. She said, oh, but I'm sure you're a nice person.
Wow.
Yeah, but in the end, she was such a lovely girl. In the end, we're the same age, our birthday. I think we were born like 12 days apart. So we had so much in common. In the end, we ended up discussing like my husband's family in Israel and her family in Iran and her religion and my religion. And so in the end, it was like we were great mates, and she actually got curious about
breaking down some walls.
Yeah. In the end, so that was kind of indicative of what I think needs. Well, I mean, I'm not a politician.
Yeah, but what needs to happen?
But yeah, I mean, she thought the Jews were dragons living in the dragon land, and we thought, you know what I mean? So we went and we actually met each other, and I told her, I said, my husband's Israeli, I'm Jewish.
So you asked me why the podcast. Isn't this why? For conversation,
It's
for
important.
dialogue, for parlay with my homie.
Yeah, and
But-
even in context of, I think, where you're going with this, I think MMA, Jiu-Jitsu, I think people, it's misperceived. It's perceived as maybe a hooligan sport or
Absolutely.
I don't know.
I've literally stopped. So a lot of people ask me, what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And I need to associate it to something. And the easiest thing to associate it to is cage fighting.
Yeah.
But I don't call it cage fighting.
No.
Ever.
Yeah, me
I call it mixed martial arts. And
I also much prefer that term, yeah.
Yes, because otherwise we get this perceived idea of hooliganism. And I mean, the majority of the high belts I know are all doctors, professionals, psychiatrists, businessmen. They're all of stature. Yes, not the new guys coming in because they're young and who really cares about that, where they come from, because jiu-jitsu is a great equalizer, isn't it?
100%.
On the mat, I don't care if you've got 100 million rand, right? My little white belt, who's 13 years old, will kick your butt and he's the boss of you. Until such a time as you can grow enough technique to be the boss of him. If that happens.
Yeah.
Yes. So tell me, this demonization and this dragonization of these two, when you guys were chatting, at what point did she start seeing you as human?
I think we'd been I traveled with her for a day. I think it was the second day I was traveling with her. So she we'd built a rapport. And then there was a moment where it was a bit,
Are you Jewish?
whoa, okay, an Israeli husband and Nochal. But then it was like, oh, but you seem like a cool chick, and well, okay, let's talk about this. And then in the end, we'd go to mosque, and she'd be like, so what do you guys do when you pray? And she'd read prayers for me, and I'll go, we have a similar prayer. And in the end, she was wanting to know, like her talking, it was great in the end. So I'm glad I kind of put myself out there, because also it was part of why I wanted to go. I want to see, well, how, what is it like that side of the world? And now, I don't know, but I know a lot more.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know a lot more. And you didn't die in an earthquake.
And I didn't die in the earthquake. In fact, embarrassed to say, I slept through it.
You
I feel
did.
deprived of the experience.
I was driving from my house to my office, and I obviously switched on the radio, and I heard that there'd been an earthquake in Iran, and I was like, if you die before I podcast you, I'm going to be really upset.
Well, I survived just so you could... No, but I was passed out. I was sleeping because we had just come from like a 5-hour road trip, and I went to sleep. And I woke up, and there were all these messages on my phone, are you okay?
Are you okay? Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I know it's Iran, but I've been here now a couple of weeks, I'm okay. And what's the problem? And I go downstairs, and there's chaos in the hotel. I said, what? They go, no, there was just an earthquake. I said, oh. And I didn't notice.
How far and how wide within Iran did you travel?
Quite far and wide. So I kind of did from the north, from Tehran, and a kind of a road trip going all the way to Shiraz, which is in the south. So I saw Isfahan, Yazd, and Persepolis, all that stuff that was on the way. You know what I mean? So it was like a road trip kind of down the country.
Okay, incredible. And I'm glad you didn't die in an earthquake.
I'm also.
You would have really spoiled my podcast. So listen to me. I read in one of your bios, to finish off the summary, psychologist coach. Is that true?
Psychologist coach?
Yes.
No.
Did somebody misconstrue something?
Somebody was very
I
confused.
thought as much.
Yeah.
I literally have it in red.
I'm neither a
question mark?
psychiatrist nor a coach. I mean, neither a psychologist nor a coach. I'm a psychiatrist. I think most people don't know the difference, but I'm a doctor who specialized in brains.
Correct.
And I'm
Psychologists can prescribe.
No.
So
psychiatrists
can
We can
prescribe.
prescribe because we're
Psychologists
doctors.
can't.
Psychologists can't. Yeah.
Correct.
So and the couch is a practice that I sort of work quite closely with. They're based in Rivonia. It's a practice of psychologists that I sometimes sort of affiliated to, or if we could say, I refer to them, and yeah. So I don't know how that's kind of I'm not that's where it came from. I don't really understand how it morphed into that, but yeah.
I know. So let me ask you a question. I know everybody asks you about MMA, and I know everybody asks you about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we will most certainly have a discussion about that. But, okay, so Danella Eliasov matriculates, and Danella Eliasov decides, I want to do medicine, correct? Did you know immediately that you wanted to go into psychiatry?
No, not at all. It was like, that person you weren't supposed to fall in love with. And then you do. You know what I mean? No, it was when I was med school, when I had to do, we rotate, so we do surgery, gynecology, blah, blah, blah. So when I went to psychiatry, it was just this random, module that I had to finish. So I went in there thinking it's just another module, and then I was like, oh wow, why do I like this so much? And I really liked it, but it was always going to be surgery, maybe orthopedics, plastics. It was always, and then it just, the more I did psychiatry, the more I just realized, no, actually, maybe I must do this. And then there was a point where I think that's why the confusion about the surgery. I actually did start. I wanted to start specializing.
I remember you.
Yeah, because
yes.
I think that's. And
I mean,
then,
do you want to mention what you were doing in surgery?
Do you want me to? I
Your
used to do
choice.
30 circumcisions every Friday.
30 circumcisions.
So yeah, so then I missed psychiatry, and then when I did psychiatry, I missed surgery. But ultimately, it was like a heart gut. You know what I mean? It was like my love. It was what's my true love, and then
Yes.
it was psychiatry.
A meeting of your purpose. A meeting of
Yeah,
your
it felt
passion.
like I can't tell you why, but I was meant to do psychiatry, and that's.
In retrospect, if you could go back and change it, would you?
No, I wouldn't. But I think if I had done surgery, I would have been happy too.
Okay.
But I'm glad. I'm really happy where I am now, so I'm glad it turned out that way. Yeah.
For sure. There's some very, very interesting stories that you've told me before in terms of this office and some of the people you've worked with.
Well, I think my stories probably, my exciting stories more came from like Baragwana and yeah. So the private practice tends to be a bit more, a little bit calmer. Yeah, but I have some wild stories from Barra. Yeah.
Care to share any?
Well, I can tell you that they once didn't let me out the ward. But that was at Helen Joseph, yeah. So we have to sleep there overnight because we were on call, and I just was like in my pajamas, I was all scruffy, I hadn't brushed my hair, and I had my bag with my like sleeping bag and my food, and so I looked, I don't know what I looked like.
Basically,
I thought I looked like a doctor.
Patient.
So I go to the security gate and I pull, and there's a security guard who has to open for you. So I pull and I look at him and I pull and it's not opening, and I'm like, and he goes, where do you think you're going? And the nurse comes running out of the duty room. She's the doctor. Oh my God, doctor, I'm so sorry. So needless to say, he remembered me forever, and I dressed a little bit better when I left.
Yes, and you became best friends.
Well, I don't know about that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I went for a makeover.
I've got a question I want to discuss with you, right? And I'm gonna give you the background of where this comes from, and I've got full permission to give this disclosure. And it ties in with why I actually started Arts of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Right at the beginning. So I had mats in my house, right? When I first moved into my house, and I was still a bachelor, and where my dining room table is now, I had mats. So it was an entertainment area.
I think I remember that.
In the entertainment area,
those mats, yeah.
and that's where we rolled. And I did that specifically for my brother, because Jared turned around to me and he said to me, Hans, I need you to train. So I was training in Joburg, and I was coaching Mondays, Wednesdays. And he said to me, I need to train, but I can't get you to Joburg. So we pulled the mats in and we started training. And the reason that he needed to train was because he suffers from anxiety. And I never ever knew that he suffered from anxiety. And it's something that he kept a secret, because at that point, this was a long time ago, but of course he didn't know how to deal with it, he didn't know how to manage it, he didn't know if he'd be judged, nevertheless. And what he realized was that when he did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, through the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he could manage very successfully his anxiety. And so we started the Jiu-Jitsu because of that, and as a result we grew and grew, and then Carl came and all the guys came and JP came and then Stefan came and Reino came, and that was the first core group of Arts Well. But it was primarily, I mean, we'd all been rolling before that, but us, I mean, Arts Well basically started because of the co-founders, myself, JP and Carl. But that was sort of for me a catalyst, because we started training at home. And he says to me, so this is what Jared says to me, he says, if he doesn't train for 2-3 weeks, he feels that anxiety level increasing. And the moment he trains, right, now, we can use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as an example, and I'm comfortable to do that. But I believe that any aliveness sports, so mixed martial arts, boxing, wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, anything where you need to be completely present, because if you're not, you're in danger. Let's face it, you're in danger, okay? I think it brings you to the present, and I think in that present, I think that's where the magic happens in terms of this anxiety, and I'd really like your opinion as a doctor and as a psychiatrist on this.
So I'm partly going to answer you as a psychiatrist, but also in my personal capacity,
Yes.
because again, how much research there is on specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and anxiety, well, I don't think there
Aliveness
is.
sports or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah. So, but the role of exercise and treatment of anxiety proven. I mean, that I can say as a psychiatrist, that exercise and managing anxiety, definitely a proven link. I would hypothesize, though, that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would be a more effective form of exercise. If you were to choose a form of exercise and you've got anxiety, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would be highly recommended, in that, precisely from what you've said, it forces you to sort of mentalize and to stay in the moment, and you have to focus on the moment. You actually have to forget about the external stuff, the sort of racing thoughts, your thoughts going to really bad places. You have to be there and present. It also teaches you kind of to control your body, to control things like your breathing, so you become very aware of your own body.
Very much so.
And I think that there's elements of that also. I mean, even in terms of cognitive flexibility, neuronal plasticity, our brains can just, like little trees, and form. I mean, Jiu-Jitsu, if you run, you just sort of keep running, and it's kind of one movement. We have to, it's all kinds of, so in terms of neural networks, again, I'm not saying this from a research perspective, but I would imagine that it's really, it's really probably good for neuronal plasticity from that perspective.
And I mean, think about it. You're getting first of all, you're getting dopamine just purely because of the exercise.
Yeah. Okay? And the endorphins, and
But you're also getting, I believe, very much so, oxytocin. Because think about it, we walk in, we all hug each other because we have no personal boundary space. I mean, it's a fact, right?
It's like getting
then
hugs.
Even within the role, there is that sense of closeness.
Yeah, even though it's essentially a combat sport, it actually, that's a very good point. I mean, it's one of the few combat sports where it's actually like it's a closeness in a way.
It's a closeness.
Yeah.
And after we're training, we all hug each other. I mean, we all walk down the line.
As I think of how many times I've rolled someone and felt aggressive or violent in that role, I don't know that. I mean, maybe in a competition.
Different story.
Okay,
but
in
certainly
training,
not in class.
I mean, once or twice there were a few guys that thought they'd sort of prove themselves and whatever, and then okay, fine. But most of the time, I actually can't think of it as an aggression at all. Actually, it's completely devoid of aggression. Yeah.
So I have another friend of mine who, and this is also part and parcel of why I wanted to discuss this. He's a very successful businessman. All of a sudden, for no reason that he can place his finger on, he started developing anxiety. And I happened to be with him while this started happening, and we started discussing this. And I said to him that, and again, part and parcel of why I want to do these podcasts and have these discussions is because if I'm advising, I'm conscious enough to know that I don't know enough to advise well. Okay, so it's good to speak to you about this, and I hope you listen to this. But the fact of the matter is, he's so busy opening up businesses, opening up different branches all around the world, carrying on. And I'm saying to him, when are you giving yourself a break? When are you focusing on something other than? And I think any of these aliveness sports, regardless of what it is, yes, I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is special, but we're biased.
Yes,
okay, we're biased. But any aliveness sports, and Matt Thornton coined that phrase, aliveness. Any aliveness sports will give you that sense of presence. Because I know with my, ADD, OCD, germophobia, insomnia, partial dyslexia, I know that I cannot meditate, and I've tried to meditate. Many, many, many times I've tried to meditate. But you give me that perfect role, that perfect spar, that perfect opponent, and for that time, I'm gone. I'm so in the present that I leave with a state of, I'm going to use the word euphoria. Because sometimes when I'm driving home after training, I'm literally in a euphoric state.
No, I can identify with that because you feel wonderful afterwards. But I think it's also a lot of, all my patients with anxiety, a lot of the time that people high functioning, and what you said was quite pertinent. I don't know where it just came out of nowhere. Often people say, well, why am I this anxious? Sometimes there is a traumatic childhood, and just sometimes there just isn't. Sometimes you just get anxiety. Your brain just decides to kind of
kick over.
Yeah, your brain just decides to kind of not participate in this whole thing.
It can actually happen despite a catalyst.
So
there doesn't have to be a catalyst.
There doesn't. It can come. Most of the time, there's something. There's a life-changing event, some kind. But sometimes, literally, there's nothing. It just your brain somehow, somewhere in your genes, or we don't know why, something switched and your serotonin transmission went all wonky, and now you have anxiety. And people are so embarrassed about it. Everyone comes here and they're so nervous to see you, and they're sweating, and they're the whole way here. And I'm like, don't worry, no one wants to see me. I don't take it personally anyway. Everyone comes and goes, no, I really don't want to be here, but... and people are so ashamed of it, but a lot of people have it. And I think what you're saying about the modern lifestyle of just no me time... there has to be me time, and I think Jits is a
think about it. Think about a couple of 100 years ago. You were a subsistence farmer, and you would go out and work very hard, but you'd also sit there next to the dam and contemplate your navel while you're looking after your cows. No, but
and it would get dark and you'd go to sleep, and it would get light and you'd wake up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But you said something interesting, and I want to really go on to that. You said serotonin.
So it's quite a common. I mean, I'm not going to give a whole. I mean,
Please,
I'll bore your listeners.
Go into it.
But in terms of what the mechanisms behind anxiety disorders, it's got to do with serotonin or adrenaline. There's several neurochemicals that are involved, and it's actually just faulty neurotransmission. It's kind of your nerves making a mistake. It's almost. I always an analogy that I sometimes use is, if you have like a security system and a like electric fence, and sometimes it just goes off, but there's no rubber. That's anxiety.
Okay. So it's
so
literally
anxiety is
like
normal, because if we didn't have anxiety, we would not pay traffic fines. Not that I do. I shouldn't say that publicly.
Of course you do.
I'm a very law-abiding citizen. We wouldn't study for exams. We wouldn't have matriculated. We wouldn't. You know what I mean? We wouldn't just do anything, because we would just sit like lumps. So anxiety is good. But up to a point, and then when it reaches a certain point, it actually becomes dysfunctional. And it kind of,
and
takes
that's
over
where
your
these
life.
people who suffer from anxiety,
and that's when we call it a disorder.
So, what would you advise, or what could family? Because I've equated, because I've in my life I've been closely associated to anxiety, as well as I'm just trying to think of what it is now. I don't want to put this out there. Depression. All right. As well as depression, and in both of these things, it's unseen. People don't understand it, and yesterday you were cool, right? And today you're not cool. And as a family member, as a loved one, as a wife, as a partner, as a friend, whatever the case may be, how do I reconcile that?
It's hard, because the thing which is saying, this intangible. Well, look, now it's becoming a little bit more. I mean, we've got like functional MRI scans, things where we can actually show patients. Look, we can't do it in South Africa yet, but where we can show them pictures of, look, if we scan a brain that's a normal brain and a depressed brain, they don't look the same functionally.
Yes.
The hardware looks the same, but the software doesn't look the same. Yeah, so we can actually start showing them on a more chemical, biological level. But John, it's so much easier to say your arm's broken, look.
Yes.
And
it's
the
physically
problem
tangible,
is,
and I've got the
and a lot of
cast on.
people say they don't believe in depression, and to me, or anxiety, to me, at this point in our advancement in science, it's like saying you believe the earth is flat. You know what I mean? It's okay. But it is literally like that, because I understand before we didn't really know. We still don't really understand the brain, but we didn't actually know how depression and anxiety work. Now we actually really do know. Yeah. So if you tell me you don't believe in it, I'm like, well then. It's not about believing it. It is.
Yes, the fact of the matter is the overwhelming evidence is there.
Yeah.
Right. By peer-reviewed evidence. Correct, by multiple scientists
I think we've sort of come to the point where we know it's a thing, it's a medical condition. And I think for families it's hard, because you were asking sort of about dealing with it as a family member. It is hard, because if you don't know this, you think that the person's, just being full of nonsense.
So what's the best way I can support this person?
Well, I suppose to ask them.
Yeah.
Because people need different things. Some people want you involved in the treatment, other people don't. And also, I know what can be quite annoying to patients who are on medication is, you have a bit of a fight. Oh, have you taken your meds this morning?
Yeah.
That
and
kind of stuff.
So I found with Jared, what happened is, first of all, his anxiety manifested in terms of alienation. And it's so interesting, because he's a musician. I mean, he goes out there and he plays in front of hundreds of people, thousands of people sometimes. But his manifested in terms of isolation. So he'd completely pull himself aside. And I think one of the reasons he could speak to me is because of the trust. And I think a large thing is not to abuse that trust, because if I had abused that trust when he came to me, that would have been
that would have been that.
That would have been absolutely that. So almost treat it with kid gloves.
Not to judge.
But as a responsibility. Somebody with anxiety has come to you, or depression has come to you and said, I have this issue. I've trusted you, because God damn it, you believe they've trusted you if they've come to you in the first place. Be very careful with that. Be very, very careful with that.
Well, that's what also makes my job so special.
Yes. The rewards.
Because actually I'm being trusted with actually the most, if you go to your surgeon or your endocrinologist, your pulmonologist, people are bearing their souls. You know what I mean? I think that the word psychiatry actually comes from, I think the root of the word, it means soul doctor.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. So it's to come to your psychiatrist and actually say, listen, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
I think I can see how much people struggle with that. It's a different experience to saying, I think my leg's broken.
And I think that the necessity for discussion in terms of PTSD with a psychiatrist or with our psychologist, and I'm not putting anybody down, but not with somebody like a counselor, is completely downplayed. I don't want to go into it, but a very good friend of mine has just gone through an horrific time, and I kept on saying to him, go and see a professional. A professional is a psychiatrist or psychologist. That's it. Don't go and see a counselor. This is my opinion. I'm entitled to it.
Your opinion is right, and I think it's important that people know, because I've had to pick up the pieces of underqualified individuals that see patients. They don't even know half of the damage that they're doing.
Yes. And they think they're doing well.
No,
and they think they're helping.
And
it may come from a
good place, but we studied for a very long time to get here, and it was for a good reason.
Yes.
I mean, so, in terms of a clinically trained psychologist, a psychiatrist, we spent a hell of a long time learning about the brain and what it does. And if you don't know, you can make things much, much worse.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, I'm very, very interested, and hopefully next year I'll be starting, no, not next year, 2019, I'll be starting my BA in psychology.
Awesome.
Yes.
That will be, it's a fascinating, I think you're going to love it.
I've started a MOOC. You know what a MOOC is? A massive open online course.
Okay.
And I did an intro to psychology, just purely for shits and giggles, nothing else. And I did an intro course, and I started the intro course, and the beginning of it was very boring, and I realized that I would have to do it in my BA, so I stopped because it was so boring.
Don't do it again.
So I listened to probably during a work week 2 to 4 hours worth of podcasts and audiobooks a day, at least. And it's the best of the best in terms of psychology out there, in terms of anthropology, in terms of neuroscientists, and I listen to these people speak, and when I first started listening to it, the first person who, and actually the catalyst for me wanting to become a psychologist is a guy by the name of Jordan Peterson. He's a psychologist from Canada, and he's just absolutely incredible, and I'd listen to this guy and just be completely lost. But as I started listening to more and more and more, and the likes of Gad Sad and the likes of Angela Duckworth, who's a brilliant psychologist, she's written a book called Grit, which is absolutely phenomenal. The more I listened to them, the more I started getting it and really understanding this fascination with how we tick. Because my job as a consultant and my job as a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu coach is to understand how people tick. That's it.
Well, the truth is no one does, which is why it's one of the fields. Psychiatry is what I gave a talk once, and I kept saying how we don't still understand this and that about the brain. And someone put up their hand and said, well, why didn't you choose another organ? It sounds like you have a hard time because you don't know how, the cardiologists know how their organ works, and the orthos know how the bones work. Like we think we kind of know, but I think there's so much more
that can be discovered
infinitely.
But having said that, if you go out there, you are infinitely more in a position to advise somebody than I am. And I'm a little bit more in a position to advise somebody who's never been in my position in terms of coaching and in terms of actually going out there and being the autodidact that I am and studying as much as I do and reading as much as I do. So I'm in a fortunate position where I know enough to know that I don't know.
That's what I was good about. Yeah, so because the dangerous part is to know a little bit, but not know that you don't know enough, and to use that little bit
to try and help people.
That to me, I see that it is absolute disaster to people. So people who've done Psych 1, or I don't know, they've got a family member who's got a bit of whatever knowledge. It is horrendous. Read a book, or even studied whatever it may be. That little bit of knowledge, just enough to make it dangerous, but not enough to know that it's so dangerous.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, I've got a good friend of mine who's a psychologist, but she's not clinical, and she's a HR manager, and she's a phenomenal human being. And at certain points, she'll turn around and go, "I'm sorry, I can't take you any further."
But she's qualified to know that her scope of practice is not clinical.
Correct.
So educational psychologists know where their scope ends.
Yes.
There's different. Industrial psychologists know where their scope ends, and I think I'm going to bring an analogy which is relevant to Jiu, so you'll like it.
Yes.
It's like how if you roll with a white belt, they know just enough to really injure you, but not enough to actually have a nice roll. Yeah. So it's kind of like the scariest. If I say from my own experience, if I get onto the mat and I see white belts, I run. Yes. I don't want to get injured. I run to the purple belts. I run. You know what I mean? I run
to the high belts.
To the high belts, because they know enough not to hurt me. Actually, they'll submit me, but they won't hurt me. The white belts know just enough to be absolutely flippin' dangerous. So
very true.
Yeah.
Very, very, very
true.
true.
It's actually a similar sort of thing, to know just enough to cause harm. Yeah.
True story.
Sorry, white belts, if you're listening, we love you.
White belts are people
You'll be
too.
big one day.
White belts are people too. Definitely. This white belt phenomena it's such an interesting one to see these guys come in and see the computation not happening, and to see the mind body connection not happening, and to move in certain ways, and the guys look at you as if you're an alien, like how does your body move that way, and to see this progression and the slow progression, and then all of a sudden it starts. So my analogy for a white belt is I discuss it in terms of language, right? And I say that when you walk in, right, you can't speak, and then in 3 months time, right, because it's always 3 months, that to me that's the period. If you can get over 3 months, you're good to go. And in 3 months time, you know basic words: hi, hello, I am, white belt. That's it. And then in 6 months time, you can speak sentences, right? And then in 12 to 18 months, your blue belt level, now you can start writing beautiful sentences. And then purple belt, I believe at that point you can write poetry, and at black belt, that's your thesis.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, after your thesis, what do? Go back and start again. And only now do I understand that. Now that I'm not on the verge of, there's no anticipation in terms of my black belt whatsoever, Richie.
Richie.
But I'm at the point now where I'm very advanced in my belt in terms of my technical ability. My rolling ability needs to match my technical ability. But I'm finally getting it. I'm finally looking at an armbar and going, oh, I get it. Oh, I really understand what that armbar is.
No, I didn't know. I hated it in the beginning.
What, jiu-jitsu?
Yes.
I remember.
I
was there.
You were there when I didn't want to do this nonsense on the floor.
I know.
And I
put on a
moaned
pajama.
and put on the pajama, and I groaned and I moaned and I said, I don't understand, and this is all. And then 3 months later, I won SA Champs, and that was that. Then I was sold. Yeah.
That was that. I was there when you won that.
And you were there when I won. Yeah.
I may have never been your official coach, but I mean,
you were
I've
definitely, you definitely.
I was part of a long part of that journey.
Big part of the journey. So thank you. Massive part of the journey.
At which point did you realize that, okay, I love jiu-jitsu, and you're exceptionally good at jiu-jitsu, Dan, and you're very, very flexible, and you've got this dogged determination that is so necessary, because jiu-jitsu truly does weed out the undetermined.
Yes. Okay,
the undetermined. And you persisted, and I saw you getting better and better and better. And at one point did you actually turn around and go, well, now I want to fight?
No, I want to fight came before.
Oh.
That's actually how I ended up doing. I ended up at the gym to box.
Yes.
And then there was this thing on the floor. Yes, I boxed first. Yeah, I went, and MMA was always the end goal. I just thought women couldn't do it. So it was kind of, I'd watch it on TV, I'd be like, that's what I actually want to do, but I can't sell digits. Sorry, it was like the
the stepchild.
Yeah,
that eventually became the lover.
Yeah, that became the lover. That then again became, unfortunately, now the stepchild again. Yeah, I know.
I don't know. Listen to me. When are we going to see you in a gi again?
I haven't put on a gi. It must be 3 years.
You know my feeling on this, Dan.
Yeah, 3 years odd. But I'm happy. I feel like what I'm doing now is what I need to be doing for my MMA career. I do think that when I'm sort of put to pasture from the MMA perspective, that I probably would come back to jits. Because
do you not think that you are doing yourself a disservice if you look at the best of the best MMA guys out there? Okay.
Are we going to have this conversation?
All the guys, you knew it was coming, right? Do you not think you're doing yourself a disservice by not training in a gi?
I might be, yeah, but I've got if I think about it, I mean, I've got so much to learn. I mean, in every aspect of mixed martial arts. I mean, it's unlimited ending. But that my jiu-jitsu was quite solid, but there were other aspects that I needed to work on, and that's what I'm working on.
Okay.
So would I like to have a jit session yes, I would, but I actually at this point I can't. There's more urgent sort of matters.
But if you're on the ground, regardless, why not just put on a gi? I'm asking.
So it's also the camp that I'm training with. I trust my coach. So I trust that he's not. So my jits has probably deteriorated. I don't remember. Also, it's a different sport. So I remember when I went to Brazil to train. That's actually after that I sort of stopped rolling. I had a great time, but it's a different sport. MMA and jits are two different sports.
True story.
So I realized that so much in Brazil, because there it's like competitive jits. You're going for points, advantages, and it's not the same thing. So now I'm training specifically for MMA to fight, because I'm a professional fighter. So that's at the moment, that is what when I train, that is what I have to focus on. What will win a fight for me? And the way we are training is specific to MMA, and I think that that's what my coach, I do trust in him, that's sort of what he's the way he's training us, and we get good results.
Yeah, look, no doubt.
So
let's be very honest.
Yeah, let's be honest.
CRT,
I mean,
okay?
yeah.
And in my opinion, and no disrespect to any other camps out there, some wonderful camps out there. Chris Bright, Pefsa, his camp is phenomenal. But the two biggest, FFM, CRT.
So I mean,
and they're great coaches.
And Monet is doing
teams.
something right, because if you look at his athletes, and I can tell you just from being coached by him, I trust that man knows what he's talking
100%.
about. So I know if I listen
We're
to him,
going to
I'll be
unfortunately have to agree to disagree on this.
We're going to have to agree to disagree, but I don't disagree. I'm just saying that if I had the time to do both I would, but I don't.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I'm not actually disagreeing. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Time. Yeah.
Time is always
and
the
priorities.
issue. Yeah, absolutely. There's a hell of a big difference, and I've had to realize that in training with professional fighters. There's a hell of a big difference between a professional fighter and what he does every day 9 to 5, right? And what I do every day 9 to 5, which is work and consult and run a club and run the podcast and president of South African Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Federation. And I needed to manage my expectations in terms of rolling with the professional to be, I'm never going to be able to roll like them. I'm never going to have the fitness
Which
levels.
makes it so hard for me, because I'm fighting people who this is what they do. Their job in
Look
the
at
world.
Liam Cleveland.
And he did the same thing.
He did the same thing.
Yeah, but it's, and I mean, if you look at a lot of, actually, strangely enough, if you look at our team at CRT, yes, there's Dricus du Plessis. He's probably pound for pound the best athlete in the country. But I mean, I think that, but
he's got the belt.
Yeah, two. He's got two belts. But his job is to train. He wakes up in the morning. That is all he does. But then you get guys like Michiel Opperman. He's a chiropractor. He sees patients. Adam Speechley, who's just qualified as a physio. You've got Neil du Plessis, Dricus' brother, who's a lawyer. Yeah. And they're all pretty damn good fighters.
And you have to try and reconcile this life you have outside of work. And at the end of the day, your job pays your money. Your job pays your bills, because MMA pays nothing. So
that's
the problem.
It's a problem, and the thing is that balance is difficult, and the problem is when we step in the cage, most of the time the person especially I fight mostly internationals. I haven't actually fought any locals. They are I haven't. They are professional fighters. That's what they do. So like Dricus, they wake up in the morning, they train. That's what they do. Their job is to train, and I don't do that.
So what do you think needs to happen? And I really mean this, because I think we're a couple of years behind the States and Europe, not in terms of our ability and not in terms of our athleticism and our skill, but purely in terms of the backing and the finances. Because you take the standard fighter in the States who signs to the UFC, he's got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, he's got a wrestling coach, he's got an MMA coach, he's got a boxing coach, he's got a nutritionist, he's got a strength and conditionist, he's got a psychologist, sports psychologist. That's the team, right? We've got a Jiu-Jitsu coach, a boxing coach, and now our nutrition's coming up. I mean, look at guys like Rory Diesel. He's very, very, very good at what he does. But there's no infrastructure.
So what Dricus does, which is I think why he does so well, is he has created that infrastructure for himself. Even though it's not all maybe necessarily under one roof, he's got the dietitian, he's got the physio, he's got the conditioning coach. I mean, I train with Scott as well. I mean, I go to the same conditioning coach, and I mean, he's world class, kind of another level, way ahead of where this country's at. But if I think about how much money I lose doing the sport and be paid to do the sport,
True. I know some guys that pay more on their camps than they do on their purse.
I can tell you that my purse, I actually don't even want to think about it, because I lose and pay. So, look, thank God. I mean, our team, CRT, I mean, our coach doesn't charge us. Our gym's fully sponsored. He doesn't get a cent, Monet. Not a cent. He doesn't make a cent. In fact, he probably also loses money, because if there's something to be fixed, he fixes it. You know what I mean? My coach Scott, my conditioning coach, he's coaching me, so I'm really lucky that from that perspective. But I mean, it ends up costing a fortune. The dietitian and the physio, the injuries, then it just and also I'm lucky in that the hyperbaric oxygen chamber at Mill Park, they've sponsored me, which is really good, because I'm old now and get lots of injuries. I get a lot of injuries. Evan Speechley, who's a physio, he's
looks after you.
So it's kind of like I'm lucky, but if you have to pay for these things, it costs a fortune, and I still have to pay for certain professionals.
Yes.
So
can you imagine being a guy who doesn't have the access to the networks that certain big camps have, and still try and train and still try and get out there and still try and hold up a
And
job.
let's be honest, I don't take my purse. I give my purse away. I don't want my purse. But I'm very lucky to be in that position. Some of the guys, that's what they do. They actually need that purse to live.
To live.
And it's not made very easy.
No, it's not at
So,
all.
yeah.
And I think, it's interesting in terms of if you look at call it interesting, call it fortunate, call it worked for. You and I are both professionals, and even with my Brazilian Jiu Jitsu club, for the first year I just bathed money, pay, but I was in a position to do that. And even now, there's a difference between it being my sport and being my business. If I have a guy who, for argument's sake, he's been retrenched, and he comes up to me, he's like, look, Hans, I can't train anymore. I'm like, you will train. Now's when you will train, and you won't pay me.
Because you love it too much.
No, because he needs it. He needs the support. He's going through a tumultuous period in his life.
That's when you need it the most.
That's when you need it the most. And as a coach, I have the ability to turn around and go, don't pay me. 3-4 months, when you get a job, we'll get back on track. We'll sort everything out. But that's what's missing in that. Sometimes just the humanities. It's not about money.
Well, sometimes if your business is your gym, you can't do that.
Exactly.
So it's just, I think it'll get there.
So where's the money? Where's the big sponsors?
They're coming. I mean, I know from my gym. I know we're sponsored by Q for Fuel, Bad Boy. We wouldn't have a gym if it wasn't for them.
Okay. So you're fully sponsored.
So we're fully sponsored. I mean, none of us pay a cent.
What responsibility do you think lies on EFC in terms of getting more sponsors in order to pay the guys more? And I'm asking, is that?
I really do think they should. I really think that's a problem. Yeah. I think they should look after their athletes.
Let's take the average MMA guy, right? He has to be a specialist in 5 disciplines or 4 disciplines, and if you're really not good, you're only going to be a specialist in 2 disciplines. But if you know what you're doing, you're going to be a specialist in 4 or 5 disciplines.
And if you're hoping that the EFC fighters will be of the quality to... Yeah.
So I'm the specialist in 4 or 5 disciplines. I'm out there. In my opinion, an MMA practitioner is the pinnacle of a sports person. Just think about it. So let's say, for argument's sake, I'm out there and I'm doing another sport. I'm not putting any other sport down, right? MMA is not my passion. I'm just talking about my opinion. In fact, if you take any other sports person out there, they're doing one thing. One thing. I need to be a specialist in archery. I need to be a specialist in synchronized
Well, it's probably
swimming.
like doing like a decathlon or something.
Yeah.
Because it's
still, yes, but there's a skill involved. There's a skill set involved in jiu-jitsu. There's a skill set involved in stand-up. There's a skill set involved in Muay Thai. There's a skill set involved in takedowns and wrestling. Then ground and pound. I mean, think of those 5 disciplines.
No, you could separate into so many separate aspects.
This is the pinnacle of what a sports person could be, in my opinion. Pay them. Pay them accordingly.
So again, I don't know in terms of the economics of it, but for example, I was with Jeremy Smith. He just fought in Bahrain.
Yeah.
They're the prince of Bahrain. It's the princes that their organization is brave, and the prince who that's his organization. So they've got unlimited funds, unlimited. So there's fire coming out of the stage when you walk out.
Was it a good production?
It was a beautiful production, and they look after their athletes like pristine. I mean, they put you up, they put your corner up, But again, I kept thinking, wow, and they treat you well, and there's a bus, and they take you to and from the venue to the weigh-in. They feed you 3 meals a day. For I think Jeremy was there much longer than me, for about a week. They food and lodging.
That's incredible.
But they have we've got to remember that they do have unlimited
money.
funds, and I don't really can't speak on behalf of EFC in terms of that, but I would doubt that they have unlimited
I'm
funds.
not even for 1 second putting down EFC, because EFC has been great for this
No,
country.
they've been amazing for the country, and
Absolutely
I think,
amazing.
and I don't know the economics of the whole situation.
Neither do I. I'm asking questions because.
But would I, in an ideal world, like for the guys to be paid more? Yes. And would I like to be paid more to give the doggies more money? Yes, I would.
Because you take all your money and
give it to the doggies.
You give it to the doggies.
Yeah.
So let me quantify that. You actually give your whole purse away.
Yeah, I give the whole purse. So it depends. I've given to various animal organizations. The one that I'm supporting at the moment is called Animal Allies, and what they do is it's like for dogs that are for animals in sort of more underprivileged communities, townships. Katlehong, for example, is one of their sort of areas that they look after, and there's a mobile clinic. They'll go into the township and sort of see what the animals need. They give them food, they give them leashes, they teach them how to look after the animals.
Oh, wow.
And then I think it's every 6 months, is a massive spay and neuter campaign. So it's just like we like 8 sort of theatre tables and just a production line, spay and neuter everyone. They vaccinate. it's amazing what they do. So yeah, so that's
incredible.
sort of, so it's that kind of thing that
that you get involved in.
Yeah.
Okay. Fortunate that you can do that. Very much.
So I'm lucky, but I promised myself that when I got signed as a pro athlete, that this still had to be my hobby. It isn't my job, and there's a certain, it changes it in a way when you take the money.
Yeah.
But I thought it would keep it as a hobby for me, but unfortunately, it came to the point where, look, I'm fighting internationals. It is a job for me. I've got 2 jobs. I was kind of trying not to have 2 jobs.
The problem is if you don't take it seriously, you can get injured.
Yeah, and just you won't. It's just, if you're going to do it properly, and it's
and
not.
You have to be 100% in MMA.
Yeah, especially at
that person is there to smash you, just like in Jiu Jitsu. You can't go in. You will have an arm broken.
And especially EFC being with me, I'm only fighting internationals, and their standards are they've been doing the sport longer than us. They have more resources than us.
Absolutely.
So unfortunately, I have 2 jobs. I wanted a job and a hobby. I don't have a hobby now.
So your first fight was not Eden, eh?
My first fight was Zita from Hungary.
Zita. That's right. Okay, and you won that one.
Yes.
Correct. Your second fight was?
Nicole from Italy.
That's right.
Yeah, and that one
and you won that one?
No, I lost that one on points. Yeah, I lost that one on points. And then my third one now was a year ago was Irene from Spain.
That's right. And you won that one.
And I won that one.
Yes, I remember that fight.
Yeah,
I remember that fight. I remember you dominating her in mount. And then I remember her going inverted.
That was, I didn't know where she was. I had to actually look up. I even saw myself in the fight doing it when I watched it after that point where I looked up to see where are her legs, where are my legs, like what is going on here, because they were just legs everywhere.
I saw you looking up.
I looked up because I didn't know where her legs were. I didn't know where she was. So I needed to check.
Everybody was screaming because her leg was around, and her leg was around, for the listeners who aren't watching at this, she was behind you and her legs were around you, and everybody was screaming for you to take her foot.
But I was about, if I had faltered in any, I thought about it, but she was this close to taking my back.
Yeah.
And having my leg in some inadvertent way. I think she had a lot of limbs.
Had your leg.
She had my leg.
Your leg.
So
yes.
I thought, I'm just going to sit here and wait for the round to end,
yes,
and
looked up at the
elbow her in the leg a little bit.
No, but first you punched her.
I punched her, and then I thought, the elbows are more sore.
Really
yeah.
Okay,
and then I was like, okay, let me elbow her. And then I kind of was looking forward to the third round because I was like, right, this, she's going down.
And she threw the towel in.
And then she threw the towel in.
Who threw the towel in? Was it her or the coach?
No, her, because afterwards we
were so confused.
Yeah, no, I was very confused. I was actually really angry.
Yeah,
I was like, I've waited a year for this fight, and I would like to finish my fight. Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. So she threw in the towel because I think it was actually Liam who was watching. He was right by her corner, and he said he heard her arguing with her coaches. The coaches were saying, continue, and she's like, no, I'm not doing this. And they said, continue, no, but the altitude, it's this, it's that.
When you had her in mount, Dan, you were...
I think I broke her spirit.
Yes.
Yeah.
You dominated her in mount.
And I also think she took me so lightly. Because I watched an interview of hers with subtitles in Spanish, asked about what do you think of your next opponent, Danella. She goes, I can also do Jiu Jitsu. That's literally, that was literally her
I remember first of all seeing her and she's a beautiful girl, right? Yeah. I remember seeing her intro and watching it beforehand and thinking, wow.
Yeah.
And actually thinking, oh, Dan, you've got a fight.
Well, that's what I think ended up happening. Is, to be quite honest, I think it was a mismatch. And I got offered this fight, which on paper I should not have taken.
Yes. But should not have won.
I should not have won.
Technically.
But I trust my team. And I remember Dricka saying to me, you've got nothing to lose. If you lose, you're supposed to lose. And if you win... Great.
True story. The underdog.
And him saying he actually thinks I can beat this girl. Yes, she's she fought on the Ultimate Fighter. Yes, she's had, I think she had like 13 fights. I had 2 at that point. It was hectic. It was, something like that. And proper fights, like proper names. You know what I mean? She's beaten like, big names. I think she's ranked top 10 in Europe. Something like, she's ranked in the world. You know what I mean? So,
that's incredible.
So that fight was really, it was a big win for me. It was really, really,
Yeah. It was a big one.
Yeah.
When's your next fight?
So in March.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not in camp yet. Camp starts Jan.
Yeah, but you see, because of December and people being away and stuff, it's kind of like I'm almost wanting to start it now and then kind of take a break and then carry on. You know what I mean? But my camp will start
realistically speaking, how much you guys going to train in December?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's why,
Who are you fighting?
So
signed?
No.
So
I must say that no. I can't mention because I don't really know, to be quite honest. unfortunately, what's happened with all my fights is the opponent changes several times. You know,
Why is that?
I can't answer that because that would be for Graham to answer, but it just seems like they sort of don't tie it down, and then it sort of, they think I'm fighting this person, and then it somehow falls apart. Like, I know they're also working through international sort of agents.
Fair enough.
So I can't really answer that, but it's not nice because, I mean, the guys all know who they fight, especially, I mean, I've got a big fight coming up in March.
Why do you say that?
Because it's a big one.
Can you tell us why you say that?
I don't know if I'm allowed to, but you can guess. And
Okay.
yeah.
I've already guessed.
Okay.
All right.
So
if I mention it and you don't mention it, is that okay?
I don't know if I can.
Can I
confirm
make my
it.
guess?
You can guess.
Would it perhaps be a title fight?
No.
Yeah, just a guess.
It's
just a guess.
You know, stuff
Just a guess.
happens.
Stuff happens.
But it's a big fight, and yeah, and I would really appreciate knowing who I would fight because
Yes,
I'd
you
kinda
got to
like
prepare.
But
Absolutely.
on the other hand, I appreciate that they're working with internationals. It's you know, the guys are fighting locals mostly. It's hard for Graham, and also I think he also struggled with the women's division. He'd never done it before, and I think it's just a different game. You know what I mean?
But there's been some really good female fights.
No, they have. One thing I can say is I really don't. Look, I can say that I feel proud that most of us have not let the female division down.
Yes.
Most of us, but I'm going to say most because I do believe there are exceptions.
Always will be.
Which, yeah, so there were certain instances where I was actually personally offended by an athlete sort of not upholding the name of female MMA in South Africa. But on the whole, I think we've actually just really proven ourselves.
You know, the problem is, I'm going to liken female MMA in the country to getting a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in the country. There's so much responsibility on your shoulders.
Exactly.
And you need to, first of all, be deserving, right? 100%. And then hold yourself to, I believe, such a high standard because there's so few. You are such a minority, and you have the opportunity to make or break this division.
And that's why it was so much pressure for me with that Zeta fight, because I wasn't just fighting for me. If I'd gone into that fight, they put us on the undercard because I think, you know, they weren't sure. They weren't sure what I would go in and start crying or I don't know, break a nail. I don't know what they thought would happen. So I had not only you know what I mean, to worry about myself winning, but I also had to worry about, well, if I mess this up, I'm actually, women's MMA is just going to tank at that very point.
How did you manage that stress?
I don't know, I just did.
You just did?
I just did, yeah.
Psychology, coffee?
I remember being very stressed for that fight because it was just such a weight on my shoulders. Yeah. But I still feel like also the pioneers in the sport, the ones who sort of, like, I carried on training even when I was told I'm never going to fight.
Yes.
And then I got told I'm never fighting professionally, but I still carried on training.
Yes.
So I feel like we fought so hard to be in that cage, and then now other girls are going to get that opportunity. I would really like it if they understood how hard it was to kind of...
Well, this is your platform.
They're in there, but it was easier, you know, it's easier, it's going to make it easier for girls now. I mean, they're fighting at Fight Star, there's now it's a thing, girls MMA, it's a thing.
Yep.
But that's why I suppose
off
maybe I take
it... Off the back of your sweat.
Well, I can't take all the credit for it in that way.
I'm saying the pioneers.
But yeah, at the back of... Yes, 100%, because I mean, being told no, being told... I mean, I remember rolling at Vickers's gym and Graham walking in and looking at me and going, oh, you're still, you know, you're still around.
Or you're still doing your pajamas.
You're still around. And I'm like, yeah, one day I'll fight for EFC. And he's like, no, we're never going to have women. EFC,
eventually.
EFC won. I think you were even there.
I
went straight to Graham afterwards and I started nagging him and I didn't stop. I think that's what happened.
Literally just nagged him.
I literally didn't stop. Every time I saw him, the poor guy probably saw me and tried to run away. Because every event I never missed an event, and I would always harass him timeously at the end of every event.
Did you threaten him?
I probably did as well. Probably during my circumcision days. But no, I literally just I wouldn't go away.
That's amazing.
I think I just wouldn't go away. And then I think they saw that internationally, you know, it just sort of. They follow, I suppose we're following the model of the US and UFC. And that, I mean, the women's MMA and the UFC became more popular than the men's.
Did you see what Rose just did?
I'm so happy. I love Rose.
Oh my gosh, I love Rose Namajunas.
She's Lithuanian. So one of my peeps.
Is she one of your peeps?
Yeah.
And she's, okay.
Yeah.
So the throwback?
Yeah.
Hey?
So,
because her opponent.
No, she's proper top Yeah, but those girls they're as good, if not actually better, than a lot of the men. So I think that's what maybe Graham and Kyra started to sort of realize, that they needed to put women.
So why do you think they took an opportunity on you specifically? Purely because of the nagging?
Probably because they actually thought their mental health depended on it, and also because I think the timing. I think maybe it was a timing thing, but I know that I had I was really proud of that win at Fight Stars. Just shortly, I think it was during the time they were thinking of starting division. I had quite a cool win at Fight Stars. I don't know if you were there.
Remind me.
Natasha Elliott. So I took a fight of a girl who was way bigger than me. I should not have taken that fight. At some strange catch weight that I, shouldn't have been fighting at. And ultimately, I was actually busy specializing. So I was writing my final specialist exams, which I think about 60% of people fail. So I don't know what possessed me, but luckily it did, because it just so happened that fight went really well. I mean, I threw a jab, took her down, ground and pound, and pretty much dislocated her arm.
Did your arm bow?
Yeah. So it was quite a nice win for me against a much bigger girl. So I think the timing was really good from a sort of getting chosen by EFC to be the first female. My sort of my mentors or my kind of supervisors at work, and in terms of my specialization, they did not think it was so cool.
No, I can
they told me I was going to fail because of it. So I actually, that drive it's almost like I had to get in there, beat her, get out, not get injured, and go and study.
Yes.
So I think they'd also put a fire under my bum to finish that fight.
But what it does speak to what can be accomplished if with pure doggedness, with pure grit, with just pure going out there and going, I'm going to do this. Nothing will stand in my way. Nothing will stop me. And I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned in there for a lot of business people, aspiring business people,
life,
sports
I think
people.
You've got to people tell you can't do stuff, and you can either believe them or you cannot.
Yeah.
And sometimes you end up eating your words and eating humble pie, and a lot of the time you really don't.
Do you know what the problem is? Society is structured in such a way that failure is not accepted. And think about that very carefully, because that is the most ludicrous thing on the face of the planet.
So you rather don't try.
Exactly. So you'd rather not try because I don't want to fail. Whereas we should be in an environment or in a society that embraces failure because of attempt. Not consistent failure, because if you consistently do the same thing,
you should probably change.
You either change or you need to be fired or something's wrong. But why not allow people to go out there, try new things, fail as a result? So what? We need to fail. We need to step outside of our comfort zones, right? Because when we're in our comfort zones, nothing's happening.
But that's why these guys who step in the cage and then they lose, and then there's all the, sort of the couch potato, sort of...
keyboard warriors.
Keyboard warrior. And I'm like, do you know what it feels like to get in there? Do you even know?
Yes. I've never even been in a BJJ club, but I'm a keyboard warrior. And it's a massive issue, and I've been following this quite closely in the States at the moment, is just the amount of abuse that comes from people towards other people. And I think it's down to anonymity. That's what it's really about. I can sit there and you don't know who I am, and I can say whatever I want.
Yes,
and
you're very brave behind your...
There are no repercussions for my actions. Whereas if you actually said those things to an MMA fighter...
Oh, no, you would never. I mean, you
wouldn't even do it.
I mean,
Look, the MMA fighter wouldn't even fight back.
But
because
true.
He's a professional.
But you'd look like a fool, actually. You'd be shamed more than anything else.
And I mean, it happens all the time. But to comedians, it happens to actors, it happens to...
Well, you're a public figure. I think people then start thinking they have the right to sort of comment on your life and your behavior. And especially this social media and this sort of gives them that something to hide behind. They're even more sort of brave when they're
and I also think that we don't yet understand how to use this medium of communication because it's so new. Think about it. As a society, as a species, it's such a new medium of communication.
Changed things a lot. I mean, even for my profession, it's changed things a lot. I'm not going to give away how old I am, but I mean, there were no cell phones. There were,
but you're 28.
No cell phones. And when I tell my patients, the teenager ones, I say, when I was young, they're like, what? Are you old? How old?
Do you know my first cell phone was? The brick with the pull-out. With the
I
pull-out.
got my first cell phone at varsity. There wasn't Facebook. There wasn't... So times have changed, and there's cyberbullying, and there's so the face of sport, of life
as a result
changed.
of this cyberbullying, and I mean, let's discuss that for a second. how's that changed you in terms of having to deal with this?
Well, I have to kind of know what's what. So, I mean, you know, kids, there's...
It's real.
It's
real.
Yeah,
The cyberbullying is real.
a
It's
thing.
out there.
So you've got to kind of keep up with kind of what's going on with the youth, and I'm sounding really old, but
the youth.
Yeah, but look, things are not the same as when we were
No,
kids.
No, most certainly not.
So,
What advice would you give to parents in terms of being able to avert cyberbullying from the word get-go?
so I get asked that so often because
Yeah.
the parents are dead. They're saying to me, "What can we
What
do?"
can we do?
And the
First of all, send
and
them to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because then they won't care. But I mean, in terms of actual,
it's hard. I mean, I actually don't have an answer. I mean, it's I get asked this often, like almost every day, and you know, and then there are things to monitor your kids' use of the internet. Certain things you can block certain sites, but at the end of the day, the kids will have access to what they have access to.
they will.
But the main thing is to let them know that you're there for them, and that's not okay. If someone's bullying them,
Do you think that better parenting, and hear me out now, and if my hypothesis is ludicrous, then tell me, but do you think that, because I also think that the parenting is really bad nowadays, purely from a time point of view, because I'm so busy at work that I don't have time for my kids. Do you think that if there was a better parent structure and more emphasis was placed on things like self-esteem, more emphasis was placed on things like going out there and accomplishing things and battling and earning and deserving and building up that self-esteem, that there would be less cyberbullying?
I have no idea, but potentially yes. I mean, it's such a complex issue because there's the issue of the bully and their issues, or why
Yes,
they're doing that. So
yes,
that's, you know, and then there's the issue of also how resilient the kids are, because some kids will be more resilient than others. Some kids will be cyberbullied and they'll cope with it in a different way. So to generalize in a way is almost impossible, because everyone, the degree is different. The way the child reacts, the way the parents react, the way the school reacts. I mean, you can't. It's a case by case kind of situation.
Okay, I get it, but it's such a problem. It's such a problem, bullying in general, which is why I believe that everybody out there should go and do an aliveness sport. And I don't want to sound like a BJJ protagonist, so that's why I'm saying specifically an aliveness sport, and go out there and figure out what life is really about.
What's
and
empowering?
what getting punched in the face can do to you, because guess what? It's not going to kill you when you're training. When you're training in a controlled environment with great coaches, with great partners, you're going to get punched in the face and nothing's going to happen. And is it going to suck? Yes. Are you going to die? No.
Yep, and I think it's very empowering. I mean, as a woman as well. I mean,
yes,
I think it's important. I'm under no illusion that if I got mugged with a gun or with,
what are you going to do?
I mean, I know I'm not going to just, you know, throw the guy over my shoulder and armbar him. I might, I don't know. but I feel at least I walk down the street and I know, you know what, I'll put up a good fight. That I can tell you. Yeah.
And you have the added benefit of being completely underestimated. And that is probably one of the biggest things that you've got.
In terms of the safety perspective.
Now, on this note, I've been watching Facebook lately, and for some reason, I'm seeing more and more of these idiotic people out there who know absolutely nothing about self-defense and the realities of life in self-defense. And in this instance, it's actually a lady I'm referring to. She's from the States that I've been watching, and she's giving this advice on self-defense. I want to take it a step further, because I actually want to go to the 5 Rand store with 1,000 Rand and buy toys to throw them out my cart. This is how fucking irritated I am with this. So this chick is out there, and literally what she's doing is she's and then there's a site, and I mean, I'm not going to mention it now, that's actually got 12,000 followers that is reposting this to. So 12,500 people are seeing this video. Potentially half of them, right, are female. Potentially 10% of them may actually go and look at this as something that may be viable. It is the biggest load of shit I've ever seen in my life.
But there's a lot of it, even locally, there's stuff like that. Like even within our community.
But what I'm saying is, I want to take it to the nth degree. I want to say that I want to actually propose that these people should be able to be charged. And I'll tell you why, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm giving you a complete sense of false security, which is more dangerous than knowing that I know nothing. Which
goes back to our original argument, where there are laws in place that if you purport to be a sort of a therapist or a counselor, it's got to be regulated, because otherwise it's also the people that come to my course.
This is the thing. So I've done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 12 years. I've done mixed martial arts, I've done Muay Thai, I've fought in the cage, I've done boxing, I've done everything, right? I fell in love with Jiu-Jitsu, and that's my be-all and end-all, because it suits my pacifistic nature. But with all my knowledge and all the things I've been exposed to, and the best fighters in the country that I've trained with and been beaten by, and all the rest of it, it's made me realize that I don't do self-defense anymore.
100%.
I do not, and I will not. And I've been asked, and I get asked, please do self-defense. I'm like, what will one day do?
No, I get asked to do
One day.
self-defense also for women, and I actually don't know anything about self-defense. I'm an athlete and I participate in a
Yes,
sport.
a
I know how
sport.
to score points and win fights.
Yes.
I actually don't know. I can't, people say do a self-defense workshop. Probably, do I
Okay.
know more than the average girl? Yes, but
So let's take something like Krav, right?
Krav, that
No.
is self-defense.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
self-defense, 100%. Unless you are going to something like Krav Maga
That's
on a
self-defense.
regular basis for a period of 12 months, where you're training 2 to 3 times a week, where you're creating the muscle memory, it means nothing.
100%.
Nothing you watch on Facebook, nothing you...
And a workshop.
And a workshop, one weekend is going to build muscle memory.
Going to do nothing, and also
and okay, so
false
you're a
sense of
psychologist.
security.
You're a psychologist. I
Psychiatrist.
walk up to you, psychiatrist. Excuse me. I walk up to you and I want to attack you. What stage do you go into? Fight or
Fight or
flight.
flight.
Done. The only thing that's going to save you is muscle memory.
Yeah.
And how do you get muscle memory? Repeated
Training for a long time.
training.
Yeah.
So I think that people should be stopped. Literally, this video I saw last night, I couldn't sleep. I was so fucking upset with her. I literally couldn't sleep because she was teaching what to do if you get mounted, okay, we call it mounted, by a guy, and he's sitting on your legs and holding your hands down. What do you do? And she said what you basically have to do is hit them with your hip. So picture this. You lying down, I've mounted you, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu position, correct? I'm holding your legs, this is what she says, and I'm holding your arms down behind your head, right? She said you must hit them with your hip. I don't even know what that is. And this is what she's telling people, and it's out on social media. And here's the problem. Somebody sees that, right? And they're like, oh wow, that's really amazing. Let me go to a workshop. Oh wow, I really know what to do. Oh wow, now I'm getting attacked. Let me use this. You piss off the attacker, he kills you.
So yes, so
That's the point.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if I'm an attacker and you are a supplicant to me, right, and you back off and you take money and leave me alone, right, especially male to female, right, maybe we can get away with it, and that's cool. You know, I always say to the ladies who I used to do self-defense with over a period of time, right, run.
Yeah, just don't.
Whatever opportunity
yeah.
you get, run. Okay. So now I think, oh no, let me use this thing and kick a guy in the nether regions, right? Which is a lot of people say that. Okay. But my anger has the ability to override the pain function for the nether regions where you kick me. Now you've pissed me off. So now I'm not going to just take you and attack you. Now I'm going to rape you.
So I think the rape issue is it's a whole other. I mean, that's
Yes,
obviously
that's a whole
other,
psychological.
well, that's
but-
a whole other discussion in terms of also. I'm going to argue with you in a way because in a way, isn't knowing something better than nothing, and isn't feeling empowered a good thing, even if it doesn't. It means you empowered is different to being proficient in martial arts and self-defense. Just feeling a bit empowered, like I can walk down the street and you know what I'm going to.
Okay, but you're a very different case in terms of empowered. I've been training for 8 years and I've done one workshop.
But again, I think when
One
we talk about
workshop.
empowered, I think if somebody does one workshop and then goes walking through Hillbrow, then I think that's natural selection, if you ask me. I mean, that's not clever. But
No, it
in
isn't.
terms of a lot of women live in fear. They don't, a lot of women,
Then
so
my
that's a
point is-
different
my
thing. I
point
mean,
is-
yeah.
My point is a workshop is not going to work.
No, workshop's not going to work.
Find a boxing club. Find a Muay Thai club.
And my argument is, well, that's not going to, I mean, to be honest, that's not going to, as you just said, run.
Yes.
I'm going to run too, you know what I mean?
So I used to, I have a specific case of a lady who came to me and asked me to do self-defense with her. And I don't even remotely want to discuss the circumstances, but I spent 6 months with her. And everything I did with her was Muay Thai, right? And BJJ related specifically. And it was repetition of the same thing over and over and over and over again. It was use of elbows because ladies' wrists, because you're not a fighter and you don't have gloves on, the ladies' elbows are harder, and hitting to the throat, but repeatedly, over and over and over, as if we were throwing a jab, over and over and over and over again. And she did get attacked, and she used it to, because she understood that she had the surprise factor. So she hit the guy where she needed to, and she ran. And he didn't reciprocate because she hit him so damn hard, and she ran. But it was 6 months of training. 6 months of training, maybe 2 to 3 hours a week, 6 months of training.
But I think it's important to say is that it applies to guys just as much as girls.
Of course.
Because
I heard a ludicrous stat, and I don't know if it's true, but I heard something along the lines of guys, they think that 4,000% more certain in their minds that they can fight than they actually can.
Oh, I don't know about the figures, but I
know.
mean, again, if you're a guy and you've never trained
fought
in your life, you also need to run. In fact, even if you have fought, you should still run.
Well, I mean, we've been in these environments, and the first thing I do when a fight breaks out is I'm out of there. Thank you very much, because I understand the variables of a bottle and a chair and a knife.
So we martial artists, we're not brawlers, we're not street. So I know that's where perhaps mixed martial arts originated, in that sort of, not even in that, actually in fact it originated with different martial arts wanting to prove whose martial art was the best.
It was started by the Gracies.
But I mean, like Pride, no rules, and but that it's morphed into an actual sport of its very own separate nature. It's a sport. So I'm an athlete. I'm not a
You're not a brawler. Well, I say to a lot of guys, because I mean, obviously I'm fortunate enough to have access to a lot of MMA fighters, and a lot of them I've trained with, and a lot of them are my friends, and I say to a lot of people, I'd take you out on a Friday night with a couple of MMA fighters, and after it I'd be like, he's a pro, and they wouldn't believe it.
Because we athletes and our bodies are precious, and we actually can't afford to get injured in a stupid fight.
And never mind that, what happens if you do get into a fight, and what happens to your license?
So that's
what
very
happens
good.
to your contract?
Your contract, the FC will not tolerate it, and
rightfully so.
And I'm totally behind them in that regard.
So even in my club, I've got a theory that you are obviously not allowed to fight. There are very specific exceptions to that rule. But if you fight, right, and I find out you're fighting as a young guy, specifically because that's really who this is more directed towards, is the younger 13, 14, 15-year-olds coming up in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, doing a little bit of MMA. So the rule is, if you fight and I find out, you have a choice. You either leave the club or you get put into a bull ring, which is all the big belts will sit in a circle, and you will go and we will have at you. And obviously it's jiu-jitsu have at you. I mean, we never physically hurt them, but that's your choice. And thankfully, and not to my knowledge, I've never had any guys that have been in fights that they couldn't get out of. And that's the trick. Where I was attacked and now I'm defending myself. And in that situation, I say, go out and smash them. Because if you're getting attacked for no reason, and we know jiu-jitsu guys are chilled. Okay, jiu-jitsu makes you chilled. It just is the way it is. So if my young little 13-year-old who's on the mats, and I've got a specific guy I'm talking about, he's a little nerd, and he's going to probably end up going to something like Metamoris or something like EBI, because that's just his game. He's super flexible, and he got attacked. His teacher was with him when he got attacked, literally. They were on a school outing, and they were on ice. And so this big kid pushed him over and kicked him with the skates. So he went inverted, grabbed his knee and popped it. Bam! On ice.
But that's also one of the things about jits that, as a female, I can say, and I think the conversation was inevitably going to go there. The joy of a smaller, unassuming individual beating a larger opponent, and that's.
It's true. I
mean, because I spend my life getting told, oh, I'm just a girl, I can't fight, I'm a girl, I'm weaker, I'm this, I'm that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's what I've dealt with.
Your whole life?
My whole life. Yeah. I mean, we brought up, we're girls, we're soft, we little flowers, little petals.
But I think it's exacerbated by the fact of who you are. Look at you. Psychiatrist, beautiful, petite, not roughish sort of brawler type chick.
But you see, there's also this misperception that girls are defenseless little flowers unless they, big with tattoos. And I think it's important for women everywhere to understand that they're powerful creatures if they choose to be.
Absolutely.
They don't have to look.
And I know for a fact that you've used your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu against sort of an ex-boyfriend before, haven't you? I don't remember. Am I talking about somebody else?
I think so.
Okay, I might be talking about somebody else.
Although I have dated fellow fighters and we have probably rolled, but no, I don't think I've ever. Oh no! In fact, now it comes back. Yes, I have, but we won't talk about that.
Okay, we won't talk about that.
Yeah, that was but yes, choking someone out in the game reserve. That's
choking someone out in the game reserve. And then leaving.
I probably repressed that memory, but yeah, choking.
I'm sorry, I brought it out.
Okay, but there was an ex who was choked out in the game reserve.
Yes,
but kids don't do that at home.
But I also believe that you are responsible enough to know that I used it in that situation because it was necessary, and that's it. And
well, that's why I'm sort of shying away from it, because it actually wasn't, and I shouldn't have.
Emotion?
No, it wasn't. It was just he was. Well, again, it was the stigma of it, poking at me and sort of saying, well, you can't, look at you, are you really a fighter?
Okay.
Sort of trying to rile me up
Yeah.
a little bit. And then eventually I said, I'm going to count to 3 and you need to stop with this.
The prodding.
The prodding, otherwise I'm going to show you. And I counted to 3 and he didn't stop, so I jumped on his back and dragged him out. And when he woke up, he was furious, which I certainly don't condone, and I don't, but that's what happened.
Look,
so
it's
now it's
fucking
out
funny.
there. I mean, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny, but
It's hilarious.
No, okay, yeah, no, it is actually quite funny.
And you're actually my hero right now. High five. Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
But yeah, no, he was.
But it does uniquely position you to be able to do these types of things, without a doubt.
And I can, and so can every other girl that used to. Yeah. So the weaker sex, I think that's nonsense.
Well, here's something also interesting, and maybe we can discuss it for a moment. One of the girls that have joined me really, really, really suffers from claustrophobia. So she comes into my club and she's like, Hans, there's no ways I can do the sports. And I said to her, okay, come and sit down. And I had a long discussion with her because I suffered from claustrophobia. The only difference is back then, my coach, bless his soul, Nathan, and for all love, he was a white belt. So he helped me get over claustrophobia by sitting on me and making me scream. Literally.
That really doesn't sound good.
That was great.
Out of context,
okay, out
you
of
should
context.
just not say
So
what you
basically,
just said.
he would hold me in side control and he'd submit me over and over and over again while smothering me to help me get over it.
Yeah, works.
Great. So I have a chat with her and I say to her, I promise you it will work. I absolutely promise you, and I can't tell you why it will work because I don't understand. There we go. So, first of all, I want you to tell me why it works. But second of all, what's very interesting is 2 months later, I'm sitting next to JP Misa, right, on the mats, and here's this, and she's a beautiful little girl, and she looks like she's maybe 5'3", okay, stunning little girl, and here she's getting involved with this guy, and he's all, Jiu Jitsu and side control, and he's smothering her, and I sit down and I go, yeah, how's that claustrophobia? Gone.
So again, my hypothesis, as I would say, is there's a concept in cognitive behavioral therapy and in ways that we treat phobias and things like that. There is a concept of flooding. So almost, it's not, so again, having too little information and thinking you know everything, not a good idea. So I'm not sort of teaching people how to cure phobias, but it is something that we do that, for example, if you're scared of snakes, well, there's one way of doing it, which is slowly, so you get a picture of a snake, then, maybe a video clip of a snake, and then maybe a snake far away, then the snake gets closer. So it's this graded exposure therapy. There is a thing called flooding where you just, figuratively throw them into the snake pit. You know what I mean? So, fear of heights, you throw them off the bungee jumping. So you flooded her? No,
I was flooded. I did the complete opposite.
So you were flooded.
I was flooded completely.
Okay, you were flooded,
and only my pig-headedness,
you
and because I'm from Springs, basically allowed me to stay. But with her, it was.
So you probably inadvertently did some kind of graded exposure with her.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, which 100%. Is a more humane. Actually, in therapy, it's considered a bit more of a humane.
So her sister rolls. Her sister's a high white belt, Sarah. She's a 4-stripe white belt, and she so not only does she roll, but she also helps my brother coach the juniors. She's a phenomenal girl. So at first it was, you don't have to roll anybody that you don't want to, roll your sister. And then it was, but you have to come and roll with me a little bit. And then what I did is, so this is the trick, because I kind of knew what the answer was, and I basically, she's going to hate me for saying this, I used it a little bit of a test case. Okay. What I would do is I would completely redirect her focus from what I'm doing to her in terms of a technique. So I'd sit and I'd show the technique and show the technique and show the technique, then say to her, do it to me, now do it to me, now do it to me. And while she was doing it, I'd get closer to her and closer to her and closer to her without her even realizing. And she was so focused on the technique that she didn't realize. And then I'd back away, and then I'd carry on, and then back away. And then eventually I was like, look. And when she realized the proximity, she was like, oh my gosh.
So you essentially used a cognitive behavioral therapy technique that you didn't know you were using, but it was like a graded exposure, and there's your answer sort of to why potentially.
Hers was infinitely better than mine.
Well, if you ask a patient who's been treated with flooding versus exposure, you'd have to pick your cases sort of carefully of who you would flood, because it can't be pleasant. I mean, it's throwing you into the, throwing you in there.
I was so bad when I was young that you couldn't even, and still to this day, this putting of the hand on the face, even now, it still freaks me out.
If you think
After all these years of jiu-jitsu.
If you think about the concept of fighting in itself, it's actually unnatural on a physiological kind of what if we say physiological our basic human drives are to like fight or flight, self-preservation, run from danger.
Yes.
And when you get in the cage, you're actually overriding every.
You have to.
You actually. So because people say also about controlling the anxiety, getting in the cage, it's almost abnormal to run towards the danger in that way. So that's also what I love about the fighting in context of what my sort of more academic knowledge. It's just so amazing how we can override our drives as humans. We are not. Biology is not destiny.
No.
We are not
biology
bound by our
is a
biology.
massive driving force, and if you allow it, it can be controlling.
But
you do have the ability to
control
supersede
it. And again, back to as a woman, you can say, well, your biology, your muscle mass, blah blah blah. But you can say, well, screw biology. I actually.
Well, let me tell you a story.
I'm going to override this.
Let me tell you a story, and I know this for a fact because I rolled with you for so many years, and I've rolled with so many females. In my opinion, females put on a better rear naked choke than any guy. Why? Physiologically, your arm is smaller, so you get into my neck easier when you're coming around, and you can literally put on the rear naked.
So there's structural, the guy is just physically bigger, but I'm saying in terms of if somebody's determined to override what could be considered a basic biological drive,
I get you.
We don't eat, we wait.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Eating is part of one of our basic sort of human instincts.
Necessities.
We're supposed to run from danger. So it's actually such a sense of like mastery over your own body.
How does it feel when they actually close that cage door?
The worst part for me is before the fight, so like the warming up and the walking to the cage, that whole business, and then the waiting for the ring announcer to announce. Once the bell goes, though, that's fine. For me, that's fine. So I almost in my mind try not to think about the walking out part. For me, I just, like, if I think about it, I get anxious, so I just don't. Think about when I'm in there, because I'm actually not worried about what happens in there. Ironically, because you'll sit and you'll feel your heart racing and you're like, oh, it's my fight. And then you think, I ask myself, well, what am I actually scared of? And then when I analyze it in my mind, I'm not actually scared because nothing that's going to happen to me in there hasn't happened to me before.
Yes.
Trading at CRT.
Yes. So there's no unknown.
So actually the in the cage thing is not unknown. What I don't like is the anticipatory anxiety is worse than the actual anxiety. Yeah, it's anticipatory anxiety.
Yes.
So, and then I sort of, so that's a sort of self-awareness that something I've come to realize about myself, that I have to remind myself that actually my biggest sort of, my Achilles heel is that walking in part. So I just almost try and distract and almost not be present in that moment, and not dwell on walking out. I don't visualize that. So some athletes will visualize themselves walking out.
You visualize the
I
fight.
don't visualize that because that just makes me anxious.
I'm with you.
Where some athletes will tell you they do.
So obviously we know a lot of people compete, and I have 6 clubs now. 5 in South Africa, 1 in Mauritius. We've got 240 students, so it's a lot of competing. I'm involved in SABJJF, so I'm the president now, and it's always watching guys fight and always looking at students fight. And my coach Seb, I hope you don't mind me saying this, my coach from Mauritius, Sebastian, and I mean, I'm exactly the same, so I don't think he'll mind me saying this. I hate competing, and the nervousness and that whole thing, you know. And so I said to him, okay, this is the trick that I used to use to get over it. Now, I don't know if this is truth or fact, but it is what I was told, and I believed it all these years, and it's what I've told him. I was told that your body, your mind, does not know the difference between the chemical that it produces. Your mind does not know the difference between the chemical of being excited, right, and being nervous. Okay, right. So this is what I was told, and that's what I would do. So every time I got nervous, I would tell myself I'm excited. And so him and I worked for 6 months in terms of his training program, in terms of his visualization, in terms of his mental acuity, right? And he went, so SABJJF is attached to the Sports Jiu Jitsu International Federation, and the African champs were in Mauritius. He won.
That is something I actually do as well, to reinterpret body signals as positive. So in myself, I do exactly that. I have been doing since I started, and I think we probably learned it sort of from the same person.
Yeah. I don't know who told me, and I can't remember.
I think it was Nathan. It was Nathan. Okay. Yeah, it was Nathan. And my first fight, I remember he told me that, and it worked. I mean, but then now with sort of bringing a more academic sort of spin to it, some people it's the converse. So people have panic attacks because their heart goes fast and they go, oh my god, my heart's going fast, I'm going to die, and then so it's almost
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Over-interpret, or they'll get a cramp in their stomach and think, oh my god, I'm dying. Or, so there's a lot of like sort of health anxiety, and so that's like almost the opposite of what you're saying, interpreting bodily signals that are sort of anxious as not anxious, they'll go away. It's almost like tricking your body into...
Yeah, it's a placebo effect.
Well, I'm actually not anxious because I'm excited. And then you stop being anxious.
Yeah. Mind hack. I've had to mind hack myself my entire life because of how dysfunctional I was when I was young. And I mean, to get to the point where I am now, to be able to do what I can now, despite all the joys of my mind, it's mind hacks. Literally mind hacks. I'll give you an example. So if I wake up in the morning, I need to have routine, I need to have quiet. Okay? If my keys aren't in the same place, it starts the tick, oh shit, I don't know where my keys are, I don't know what's going on, and the ADD starts kicking in, and then my routine starts going out, and then I've got a meeting and I'm late, and then I get to the meeting late, and that's so. All right, identify the fact that that's an issue. I always keep things in the same place. I always make sure I'm early. I was here today, but it's my way. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. That's
your
how I manage myself.
Containing your own anxiety.
Correct. And the problem is, no, not anxiety. Yes, anxiety, right? But the problem is that people aren't willing to look at themselves, and they're not willing to say, okay, I've got this issue, right? It maybe be it ego, maybe be it whatever the case may be, but just to self-identify and a little bit of self-actualization and a little bit of self-analysis and go, I'm like this. I don't know why. It is what it is, but this is what I can do to fix it.
And often patients will come to me with, these are my issues, give me a pill, sort me, and I say that it's so much more than that. That you bring into the behavioral, the lifestyle techniques, the behavioral techniques that I can give you medication up to a point, but then you've got to look at sort of ways of managing. If you are just by nature a more anxious person,
managing your life,
you manage it, and if it causes sort of chemical dysfunction to the point where you need medication, then you damn well need the medication. That you ain't going nowhere. You're not going to be able, if you're that anxious, you're not going to be able to implement what you just said. All those behavioral techniques, you can't. Your mind just goes into a spin. So that's
so you actually think that is a form of anxiety?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to charge me for that?
Yeah, double after
really?
hours. Yeah.
Wow.
It's how you manage your anxiety.
Okay.
You make it predictable, and you like routine, and that's a legitimate way of managing anxiety.
But simultaneously, here's the flip side, okay? And I'll use this as an example. I'm going to start a podcast. Why? Because it's completely unknown. It's new. I'm shitting my pants doing it, right? But I'm going to go out there and do it. Please don't, because it's my office. I'm not like literally. Maybe just figuratively. But I'm willing to step outside of these comfort zones because I realize that you can't always stay in them.
Yes.
Because you will never grow.
But you also know the small tricks in life just to keep things...
So the Taoists have something really interesting. They live between... So they say the perfect place to live your life is on the bridge between order and chaos.
I couldn't agree more.
Because if you're in too much order, right, life is boring. And if you're in too much chaos, you're in pain.
And again, to my profession, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Too much order, and you'll be anxious. You'll have OCD. Too much and too much chaos, psychosis. You fall apart. And managing
those two.
Managing the anxiety is about creating the order you need to contain yourself and your life, and it's almost about controlling that which you have power over and that which you don't, accepting.
Yeah.
And the chaos is something you accept, and some chaos, and if it's chaos, you can change it. If you can't, well, you have to accept it.
Yeah. Well, from a sports psychology point of view, when I'm advising people to whatever I can advise, I always say to them, in terms of what you can predict, in terms of the outcome, be accountable for that, right? In terms of what you can't predict, don't worry about it. Okay. You can look at an opponent and you can say, all right, this opponent is good on the ground. Okay, I can train for that. This opponent has good hands. Okay, I can train for that, right? But over and above that, whatever that opponent does, you've got no control over that. All you've got control over is what happened. So let's say you go into this fight, doesn't matter, boxing, Jiu Jitsu, MMA, and you lose because that person was better than you.
That's okay.
That's okay. Accept it, learn from it, get over it. This is a good thing, all right? Or that opponent beat me, the fault was, right, that I didn't train hard enough. Right, there's the accountability point. That's your fault, fix it. And don't cry about it. Yes, cry about it if you want to.
Yeah,
but cry about it for an
Crying's
hour.
okay, but
Get over it. Not for a guy. Guys don't cry. You cry. Right? But get over it, or even decide to wallow in your pity and decide that I'm going to wallow in this pity for this weekend. And on Monday, I'm back at training. And I'm going to fix what I didn't get right. And I think that people don't hold themselves accountable enough. It's easier to blame somebody else.
Or some people hold themselves too accountable, and then that's so again, it's got to be somewhere in the middle.
In the middle.
The people sort of hold themselves accountable for things that they couldn't have controlled. For example, a bad ref decision.
Yeah.
You get. I mean, there's no contest where there's
Well,
like
look
an
at yours,
unfortunate.
Dan. You won because you gave up.
Yes.
Okay. And I understand your frustration. I want to win because I won.
And ironically, people said to me that that's actually the best way to win because you broke her soul.
You did.
But I was. At the time, now I realize that I should be really proud of that fight.
Yes,
But at the time,
yes.
I was like, well, I
You were
want that
frustrated.
third round because now
Yes.
I'm came into that third round going, right, this is it. This is, I'm going to finish her now. And she gave up. And I also got offended from the perspective that, again, the whole
I
women's
put in-
MMA chip on my
yeah.
shoulder, how hard we fought to be in that cage. And now you're just going to say, oh, I don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah.
But I look, I know it's more than that. But yeah.
It is, but it is breaking somebody's soul. I mean, in my jiu-jitsu class, we've actually got a series of things, and we call them demoralizers. We literally call them demoralizers. It's when you do a position where I take a pass where the pass is of such, so for argument's sake, you'd understand this like a double underpass, right? When I'm stacking and I'm pushing, and eventually the person goes, just have the pass.
Yeah.
That is a moral victory right there. It is, yeah, you gave it to me. You actually gave it to me because you couldn't deal
and
with
it's
it.
funny, and I'm so resentful of that kind of thing, of people tapping when the submission wasn't on just because
Yes.
they were tired. And,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, it's sort of, but I think it's because I think I had quite a hard road to get
To where you are.
where I
So let me
am.
tell you what Richie does to me. Richie will hunt my arm, okay? And he'll hunt my arm over and over and over and over, and he has a specific way, and I'm busy understanding what that is now in terms of just smashing my arm. And I don't mean by submissions, I mean by pressure and by control, to the point where he eventually grabs me for that armbar. I'm like, yeah, you can have it.
Yeah,
It's
please
yours
take my
for
arm.
free.
In fact, take
And
my
then
arm.
afterwards,
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck you, Richie. I didn't say that, Richie. Don't tap me on next week. But literally, it's like, and that's that demoralizing. That's that
Breaking someone's
yeah,
actual-
Just
yeah.
have it. You just take my arm. It's yours. There we go. I'll cut it off.
Yeah.
There.
And
Have it.
essentially that's what she did. She threw in the towel and said,
Yeah.
thank you. Ooh,
Thank you.
thanks for coming. I'm going to go back to Spain now.
Yeah.
So no, in the end, I mean, I think at the time I was just a bit... I also wanted that third round. I was so happy to be back in there. So I even remember my first fight with Mika, you were there.
Yes, I was.
It went by so fast in a bad way, in that I was like, why is the round so short? I found people say, oh, the rounds are so long. I often enjoy it to the point where I'm like, why is it
It's
over?
over.
So it's almost like you prepared for this moment for so long, and then it's so quick, and I actually like being in there.
How does Asa feel about that?
God bless him. The poor oak. No, he knew. Look, my defense is that he
knew what he was getting into.
like I didn't discover MMA and jiu-jitsu.
We know that the road to Asaf was a long road.
The road to Asaf was a long road, and Asaf sort of got the package, and the MMA and the jiu-jitsu came with the
Asaf
package.
is, of course, your husband, yes.
Yeah. And he went with me to European champs for jits. So that was early on in our sort of relationship. So he knew that he was dating a lunatic at that point. So he decided to marry the lunatic. That's his mistake. That's his fault.
Put it on, done and dusted. It's basically what I did with Kirsty in terms of wifing her. I realized how old I'm getting, you know what I mean? And I was like, if I don't get engaged to her now, I'm almost 40, it's done for me. So tequila, wife, done.
Tequila wife, check.
You've said yes, no take backsies.
Yeah, but I don't. I mean, I think it is hard for him. So I don't want to sort of make light of how hard it is for him.
No.
But look, he knew what he was getting into, but I don't think he quite knew, because also what the transition between amateur and professional for me was,
leagues apart.
and then the transition between training as I was before and training at CIT was again another transition, because I mean that's a proper camp. That's
yes.
So yeah, I think in terms of consuming my life, it just got progressively more consuming, and that means I'm become progressively less available.
But obviously, through whatever mechanisms you use, it works.
Yeah, and I think that's why we work, because he accepts that about me. I've had, in the past dated guys who didn't, or
wanted to change you.
Wanted to change me, gave me uphill for being a training.
I had an ex-girlfriend who asked me one day, she said to me, when does this jiu-jitsu stuff end?
And
what do you mean?
And
She's
the
like, no, when do you get
relationship
to,
ended
yes,
at that point.
when do you get to the point where you know everything? I was like, I'm hoping I can roll pretty much until I die. So let's say I live until I'm 90 or 85. Yeah, that long. that long.
And I think what he understands about me is that I need to get this out of my system, and I will know when I'm done, when I am good and done.
But never mind that. Look at what it does for you while you're working. Because let's be under no illusion what emotional stress you have to go through.
Look,
in that position.
I'm certainly not saying that what I'm doing is probably not good for my mental or physical health, if I'm honest.
Getting punched in the face repeatedly is not the best
and also
thing.
living as I do with my life is I wake up, I train, I go to work, I catch a train to Pretoria, I train, I get back at 9 o'clock at night, and it all begins again.
Yep.
That the stress levels that I'm dealing with, it's probably.
But simultaneously, the training then negates the stress levels.
Yeah, so the training helps with the stress levels. So that's
Yes.
the one thing where I say that it does help me. But then it's that being torn between being at work, being at training.
Yeah.
You've got to be at
Being
training.
at
Your
home.
patients need you, and you're never at home.
Being at home, yeah.
And never being at home.
Because I'm home between 9 and 9:30 in the evenings after coaching, and and then it's dinner,
And then
and
you go to sleep, and then you wake
Yeah.
up and you go back. So I know
And
it's
sleep,
not.
repeat.
If you could say that my lifestyle's maybe a bit extreme, maybe not so balanced, maybe not so healthy, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. It's true. I've taken things to quite an extreme, maybe.
but does it make you happy?
Yes.
And
And
that's
at
all
the
that
end of the day,
matters.
that's all that.
Nothing else matters.
And I think he appreciates it about me is that that this is something I need to do for me, and I will regret it for the rest of my life if I don't.
yes,
And I'm and he
not willing to
accepts
live
it.
through
He
regrets.
accepts it.
Agreed.
That this is what I need to be doing now.
Well, you're the first professional EFC female fighter. Think about that. That is an incredible accomplishment considering all the badgering Graham took from you.
Considering that I initially thought I would just fight once. And
Was
it
that it?
It was a bucket list thing. Yes, because at that point there were no girls. I fought the one girl in South Africa and that was it. And then I
Yes.
fought her. Remember, and I tried it.
Mika.
So it was
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, I'll just fight once. I found one girl and the two of us in the whole country will fight each other and then we'll have done it.
Yes.
And then, and then the bug bit. And then, and then it was almost like, okay, well, my goal in life is, well, not in life, but it was with regard to my sort of mixed martial arts career is to fight for EFC. And then I did that. And then it was, well, yeah, one thing led to another, and here I am training with a professional
So-
team.
Would you fight overseas?
I would.
Would you?
Yeah, I would. I mean, yeah.
Okay. If you fought in March for a hypothetical title belt, do you think that would, if it hypothetically happened, of course, do you think that would maybe be a bit of a paving stone for international fighting?
So I think I'm under no illusion that I'm probably one of the older people in
Yes.
the EFC.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we
yes,
found our sport late.
Yes. So I'm getting on in my years. So I don't think that I'm going to the UFC because I think that's
No.
delusional.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And I also don't. You get injuries, so I'm gonna keep going as long as I can keep going. But it's
And then you're putting on a gi and coming back
yeah,
to
then I'm
jiu-jitsu.
coming back. Yeah,
Good.
but so my goal was to establish women's MMA in South Africa. It wasn't to go overseas and fight in the UFC or for Bellator or Invicta. Or that actually isn't my goal. If Invicta phoned me and offered me a fight, of course I'll go.
Yes.
you
You
know,
take it.
of course I'll take it. But
Would your
and I have
practice
actually
allow?
been offered international fights before, which I've turned down. But I mean smaller.
Smaller.
organisa-
Okay.
I didn't want to. I wanted to be the South African woman MMA pioneer, and that was my pet project, and that's where So in terms of, is it my dream to fight overseas? No.
No. Is
If
it your
someone-
dream to put the belt around your...
Oh yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Big
So,
time.
so that's where that for me that's where it's going. It's not. It's just if somebody offered me a fight overseas that I happen to feel like taking, okay, I wouldn't say no, maybe, but it's not a big thing for me. I'm not kind of hoping I'll be spotted.
No.
I'm happy where I am.
And you're also not 21 without a position, and MMA is your entire life, and you need to make a living from
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah, and
because
I'm really lucky
remembering,
like that, yeah.
remembering, and again, I'm going to say this from the love of my heart, getting punched repeatedly in the face is not a good thing,
No, so I mean definitely not.
especially not for a professional psychiatrist.
Yes, you got it right.
Psychiatrist.
No circumcision for you.
No.
Yeah, no, and 100%. And there's also that element in terms of your longevity as an athlete in MMA versus jiu-jitsu. You can't
Yes.
compare. I mean,
Yes.
MMA, there's a time when you have to stop. I mean,
Agreed.
for your health, for your brain, for your...
Unless you're George St. Pierre.
Unless you Danella Silva.
Danella
I
Silva,
actually
yeah.
met him.
Oh,
So
really?
awesome. Yeah, I met him now in Bahrain when I was with Jeremy. I went with him to Bahrain for his fight
Oh,
at
nice.
Brave, and lo and behold,
There he stands.
and
The original
Liam and I
ex-murderer.
were stalking this oak. Eventually we thought he was good. Liam was even worse than me. He was just staring at him.
It's Wanderlei.
It's Wanderlei. He looked at me, and we went running up to him at the buffet, because it's like uncivilized to go. Someone like he was dishing up his food, let the oak sit down.
Yes.
No, Liam and I went beeline.
While he was busy dishing up
While he's trying
food.
to dish up his food. Wanderlei,
You're giving
Wanderlei.
South Africans a bad name.
No, I know. We disgraced ourselves completely. We just couldn't. Mikhail and Jeremy were like, just breathe. Let the man dish up. And Liam and I were like, okay. And then we were like, no, we can't. And we went.
Now, frighteningly so. I have one or two students who would probably feel the same about you if you one Saturday came to the club and came and rolled with us. I'm just throwing it out there. Okay. You'd make some people very happy.
I will be there. I am when I'm.
So, Jiu Jitsu in the park next week Saturday.
So I will be back to Jits, but not now.
Okay. But SABGF has Jiu Jitsu in the park next week Saturday, which is the 9th.
It's just so awesome how far Jits has come as well, because I'm a bit disconnected from the community, because I'm sort of, it's a different,
Of course, you're in MMA.
It's the same, but it's different. How just out of the whole, how it's grown. I mean, even Kerry Ann, what she's done with the women's, I mean, I remember when there were literally, I think the first time I ever rolled a girl was in a comp at some point. You know what I mean?
Because there just weren't no
weren't
girls.
any.
Yeah.
And now it's just holding whole seminars of girls and whole
absolutely.
competitions with just girls. I mean, it's actually, and even this jiu-jitsu in the park, before no one knew what it was. You say jiu-jitsu, they'd be like, what is
that?
Bless you, are you okay? Having seizure? It's actually so cool how.
And there's some cool federations out there. I mean, we've got SABJF, and we run 4 competitions a year. And it's a good group of guys, and I mean how that came around is we literally decided that we were 4 of the larger clubs in Johannesburg, and we figured if we just put on a competition, we'd have enough guys for us to roll. And then as it grew, the idea was hopefully then other guys will join, and I mean we've had 140 participants.
It's amazing. I mean, you'll remember the days. The days where the Jits comps were with the wrestlers. At the
Stoy Club.
At the Stoy Club. At Stoy. Yeah. Yes. And there was no girl to be seen.
Do you remember beating your first guy in a competition?
I remember you being right there screaming armbar. And I remember armbarring that work. And then I remember his poor friends filmed it and put it on YouTube or something.
That's right.
Girl beats. There was some little YouTube.
Because there was no female, so you decided to jump into the guys.
And I think I'd been rolling for honestly less than 6 months at that point.
Yeah.
In fact, even much less than that, because it was my, I remember being so excited for no gi. I'd never done no gi before. And then I got there and it's like, oh, you're the only girl. So I was like, oh, well, like, so now what happens?
Well, I did the same to one of my coaches, JP Misa. He'd been doing jiu-jitsu
so was he the only girl there?
Yeah.
Sorry, JP.
He'd been on the mat for exactly 4 days. And he entered his first competition.
So I'm so glad I got thrown in the deep end. I am, because I think when I won SHMs, I'd been rolling for about 3 months. I knew what guard was, and I think I knew a triangle.
Yeah, but you had resilience.
Yes.
And I really mean that, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. You literally had dogged resilience.
And I fought a girl from the Japanese jiu-jitsu, and she had traveled the world. I mean, I think she'd gone overseas. She's competed in world champs. So she was like their star. And somehow I made it to the finals with her, not having done the sport, not even knowing when half of the stuff I was doing was called.
Yes, I remember that.
And then I remember Nathan had only taught me guard stuff, and for some reason there was it went down to like a sudden death type of thing where I had to pass her guard, otherwise I wouldn't. To win, I had to pass her.
Yes.
And I didn't know what even passing the guard was. I didn't know that part because he hadn't got to that part yet. So I don't know what I did, but he's like, just be not with her legs around you. And I just beat not with her legs around me, and I won.
And at least the second and third time you won SA Champs, it was a little bit
then I knew like what I was doing to some
I actually won SA Champs the same year that Penny Thomas was in SA, and she won SA Champs. Remember Vila?
Yes, gosh, I remember. So I mean, we've come a long way, and thanks to people like you who kind of, I mean, you do a lot for the sport.
We do. The group of coaches it's let me tell you how incredible it is and how amazing it is. So the board of SABJJF is a bunch of club owners. So please understand one thing: our students compete against one another. Okay, so we go from running the competition to my student, let's say for argument's sake, JP Kruger, right? And my coach's students, right, Richie, Mark Hume, fighting each other. And all of a sudden, I'm on the sidelines. He's on the sidelines. We're busy calling for our students. I'm looking at him, swearing at him. He's looking at me, swearing at me. All in the absolute
love.
Absolutely, 100%.
That's what I love about
and then the moment the fight's over, we stand up, we walk back, and it's right, next fight, and off we go.
That's
and
what
it's
I
created such a great environment.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Look, not everybody subscribes to that ethos, especially in MMA. There are those who do and those who don't, but a lot of us do. I mean, you fight and then you hug afterwards. I mean, Nicole and I fought. We both sat in the medical. They actually had to tell us to stop talking so they could do our post-fight medical because we were so busy jabbering and talking. Nicole and I made big buddies there.
Yes.
We just
also
literally
known
tried
as
to kill
Eden
each
von
other.
Hell from Suicide Girls.
Eden von, the Suicide Girl. So the psychiatrist fought the Suicide Girl.
You put me in a very, very bad position because she's a suicide girl and you Dan, and I was like, how do I choose? I'm joking. Of course I chose you. Of course I chose you.
Handly, the circumcision.
Of course I chose you.
So no, back of the post-fight
But you guys
medical.
did
We were
become
so
really good
busy,
friends.
talking that they actually had to say, girls, can you just stop talking so we can examine you, and then you can talk again afterwards. We're still in touch,
Still, really?
Yeah, we still speak. I speak to. She went to Jackson Wink. She's been training there.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she's been training
Jackson
there. So we're sort of in touch. Yeah, I mean, she's an awesome chick. Mika and I, my first opponent in 2010. I don't know if you remember, but we got banned from speaking to each other for a week before the fight because Vickers and Nathan actually just sat us down and said,
you're
fighting each
mates.
other. You can't speak every night.
Yes.
How's your training going?
Yes.
What are you wearing?
No, yes.
I
remember that.
Yeah.
I remember you guys
we
being
were so
banned.
excited.
I remember laughing at you.
And I remember our coach also said, I remember Mika even came to our gym to use our cage because they didn't have a cage.
Yes,
so it was
that's
come use our cage. Eventually it was okay, can you at least not speak for a week before you guys fight each other? I said,
because you actually want to punch each other in the face.
Yes, we do. And we punch each other with all the love in the world.
All the love in the world. It's so dichotomous. Correct?
Yeah.
I love you, but I want to punch you.
I don't think, for me, it's not an act. For me, I think people fight for different reasons and out of different places.
Yes.
I'm not an angry fighter.
No.
And
I do believe that you do have angry fighters.
Yeah, you do. You have people with anger. Also people who
just
get into fighting to get rid of anger.
Yes.
And that's okay. And
Yes.
it's a source. It's their inspiration.
Absolutely.
I don't come from a place of anger. I don't fight to get rid of my anger. I generally don't get very angry in the cage.
Yeah.
It's not angry. It's competitive.
It's competitive.
Not,
I feel the same way about jiu-jitsu. Because I mean, you know me. I'm a
But,
quasi-pacifist.
to me, I can't see how jiu-jitsu is violent. I just don't see it. MMA, I can see it's violent, but we're not punching someone because we don't like them. We're punching them because it's like playing tennis. No, it is. It's like you hit the ball and I'll hit it back. How more aggressive is it?
I'm going to punch you, you're going to punch
Yeah,
me
you
back.
punch me
We're going
back.
to see who's better at punching who.
Exactly.
That's it. And if punching doesn't work, we'll take
that
you to
is
the ground.
Literally all how I see it.
MMA is like tennis.
It is.
I love it.
One hits the ball, you punch, the other one punched. To me,
And that's it.
And there's nothing more. I don't see what the problem is. Which I know in itself is probably a problem.
Yes. Perhaps you need to diagnose yourself.
Perhaps I need to see myself, yeah.
All right, Dan. I thank you very much for this podcast. It's time we've got to go. I hope it's been good, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope the listeners have enjoyed it. I know I have had an absolute blast with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and well done on this whole setup. I think it's going to be amazing. It's going to rock. What you're wanting to do with this podcast is mind-blowing. So best of luck.
Yeah, I've got some really cool people that I've lined up.
It sounds like it's going to be really exciting. Yeah. I'm certainly going to be listening. So
thank you.
Good luck with it.
Thank you. All right, guys. So long and thanks for all the fish. Thanks, Dan.